House District 30, if I may, I'd like to introduce Janine Solomon. Janine?
Thank you so much for having me here today. My name is Janine Solomon. I am a candidate for House District 30. I'm going to give you a little background about myself and why I am running for this position. I did grow up in Gales Creek, which is just outside of Forest Grove. After my dad retired from the military, we purchased the Gales Creek store. And my dad was one of the founding members of the fire department, the volunteer fire department there. My mom was a volunteer in the schools. She also helped with Campfire Girls. These are the values that were instilled in me from when I was growing up. Fast forward to when my husband and I moved to House District 30 24 years ago. We started our family, and my kids started school. I rolled up my sleeves, I jumped in, and I took part in just about any activity possible in the school, helping with leadership positions, PTO president, volunteer coordinator, site council. We raised money for playground equipment. We raised money for technology. We had direct classroom impact. I found such a great reward in being able to make that impact that I ran for school board, because Hillsborough is the 4th largest district in Oregon. And I ran for school board in 2009. I rolled up my sleeves. I won that election. I've been board chair for 2 of those years in the 8 years that I've been on. I've been on site. I've been with various committees, audit committee, strategic planning, and career and college pathways, a passion of mine. And I believe that my motto has always been, if I'm making decisions in the best interest of kids, I better go where those kids are. So I have been in the schools, actively engaged, and really finding a rewarding experience with helping the Hillsborough School District. As a longtime volunteer in the community, over 20 years, I volunteer with Project Homeless Connect. I volunteer with Meals on Wheels. I was the 2013 Volunteer of the Year for the Hillsborough Chamber of Commerce. I think that lens, as a school board member, as a longtime volunteer, as a longtime resident in this community, I think that provides a really strong lens for representing the needs of this community in Salem. I'm really looking forward to making sure that education is a priority. You want to get me talking and get me excited? Let's talk about career technical education and vocational training. That's what we need to do to address our low graduation rate in this state. And I am excited to be here. I appreciate this opportunity. I've been walking and knocking on doors since April. And thank you so much for this time.
Thank you very much, Janine. Bruce Starr, would you come up and share a little bit about Dan Mason?
Certainly. I am pleased to have the opportunity to stand in for Dan. Unfortunately, Dan has one of those couple of times a year when you can't tell your boss no kind of events, and so he's unfortunately not available to be here today. Dan is a native Oregonian. He was born and raised in Southern Oregon. He's moved to the district, and over the last 15 years or so has had the distinct opportunity to work with some of Washington County's folks that need housing. He understands what housing needs are because he's worked in that world. That's a $15 million property that he's worked for in, or $4 million property that he's worked for in Washington County. Just recently, he's become a new dad. And I will tell you that as a father myself, you understand the importance of all the things that you fight for when you become a new father. Dan is the kind of individual I think that we need in the state legislature. He's going to fight for the things that I think are important to all of us. For education, he's going to fight for what makes Washington County great. Washington County is great because of the kind of policies that we have. Those are the things that Dan is going to work for and fight for us in Salem. I encourage you to reach out and call Dan. Dan's accessible. You can go to Dan's website, danmasonfororegon.com, find out a lot more about Dan, the issues that he's fighting for, but I'm going to give you his phone number so you can call Dan. If he's not here, you can call him. It's 503-998-5907. If you have questions about where he stands on the issues, pick up the phone and call him. If you don't have the opportunity to talk to him on the doorstep, give him a call and find out where he stands on the important issues that are facing us in Washington County. Dan will fight for us. We need Dan in Salem representing us. Thank you very much.
Bruce, thank you, I appreciate that. And anybody wants to call Dan, great, and if you didn't get the number, I'm sure Bruce will have it available if you catch him. And it's on the material that's also been presented to you. Ladies and gentlemen, our third candidate, not in order of importance, our third candidate, Kyle Markley.
Hello, I'm Kyle Markley. I'm the Libertarian candidate. I'm running because the dominant political parties and their candidates do not represent my views. I would like to talk to you today about three things: law enforcement, PERS, and tax incentives. The national news has recently shown us many examples of people killed by police who probably should not have been killed. The Black Lives Matter movement has captured the national attention. But what should we do? Well, the data are clear that issuing visible body cameras to police officers reduces both the number of complaints against officers and the number of use of force incidents. People, both suspects and officers, behave better when they know that their behavior may be scrutinized. This is a win-win, and it's no surprise that more and more police departments are adopting body cameras. They should be standard. There are surely privacy issues around body camera footage, and the footage often depicts people on literally the worst days of their lives. I do not believe that all footage should be public record, but I would demand that the footage be available to the people recorded in it, and they should be free to release it to the public if they choose. I also believe there should be a presumption against the police in case the footage is lost or missing. Additionally, I call for an end to the war on drugs. Nearly all of the violence around drugs is caused by prohibition, not by use, and we do not serve addicts by jailing them. In Georgia, in 2014, a toddler was critically injured by a flashbang grenade tossed into his crib by police who were serving a middle-of-the-night, no-knock warrant looking for a meth dealer who wasn't even in the house. The informant lied about buying meth from that house, and the police didn't verify. That's an example of violence caused by prohibition, and it needs to stop. Let's talk about PERS. The unfunded liabilities of PERS have reached $22 billion. Honoring the existing contracts is going to be very expensive, but there is no alternative. What we must learn from PERS is that government is a poor negotiator of pension programs. In the hands of a private institution, benefits would not have been so generous. And even if it still failed, taxpayers would not have been on the hook. We should spin off pension administration to insurance companies, unions, or other private groups, and guarantee that there is no bailout from the taxpayers. If that means the plans must be defined contribution instead of defined benefit, so be it. In general, the government's ability to accept long-term liabilities should be limited. We must recognize that long-term liabilities of the government become a burden to be paid by the young and by the unborn. And in a system of representative government, this amounts to taxation without representation, which is morally repugnant. It is wrong to force our liabilities onto our children and to bind them to long-term contracts when they have no voice to object. Next, tax incentives. I'm not a fan. The Strategic Investment Program is a great example of government gone wrong. The program exists because Oregon has a broad business personal property tax. Machinery and equipment are taxable. But what sense does that make? Machinery and equipment do not consume government services, so why should they be taxed to pay for them? You may be surprised to learn that this tax only contributes a couple % of the state's revenue. How can such a broad tax result in so little money? Well, Oregon has over 100 property tax exemption programs. Egg handling equipment is exempt. Logging equipment is exempt, but only if manufactured after 1992. Strategic Investment Program projects are exempt. The tax is a Swiss cheese. Every lobbyist and each of their cousins got an exemption for their special interest put in. Now, politicians will tell you that these exemptions are needed to protect businesses and to be competitive. But the ugly truth is that the Strategic Investment Program requires negotiations between business and government, inevitably breaking down the neutrality that government is supposed to have. The people are rightly suspicious when they see government working with and favoring businesses with political pull. The tree is bearing poisonous fruit. It's time to chop it down. We must abolish the business personal property tax. A tax on tangible capital makes Oregon uncompetitive and is economically a stupid tax. We can repeal the hundreds of pages of law of exemptions which stand as evidence that the legislature is not serious about this tax anyway. As a libertarian, I do not believe that it's the government's responsibility to cure all of society's ills. Government should protect individual rights and the public safety. It should create fair rules and then be a referee, not a player. Elect me to be the legislature's resident contrarian, objecting to bad policies and looking out for unintended consequences. Elect me to vigilantly oppose government meddling in the economy. Elect me to protect your rights of free speech, association, and due process. Elect me because I am beholden to nothing but my principles. I will bring a detail-oriented, thorough, and conscientious engineer's perspective to the legislature. Thank you for having me today.
Thank you, Kyle. And as folks are lining up for questions, again, it's our apologies that we don't have representation here for Dan to answer questions. But one more time, because of Bruce's brilliant idea, you have a phone number. So we can record the questions that these guys are asked. You could do, okay. Please.
Jim Cape, 4 members. Sorry to waste the time of the candidates, but again, was Ted Calori ever a former president? Was he ever a board member?
Jim, he's listed on the website. I wasn't involved in the forum. I've been involved for the last 4 or 5 years.
Okay.
It was prior to my time, and really, we've more than taken enough time.
Okay,
Even if I'm wrong, we've taken enough time.
Okay, if I'm mistaken, I apologize.
Okay. I know. John, please.
John Tyner, former board member. I actually wish Bruce Starr could answer this question because he has expertise on transportation, et cetera. But what I'm wondering is the National Highway Fund is pretty much bankrupt. I shouldn't say bankrupt because it just doesn't have any money. And on the state level, we don't have much money. And the bonded indebtedness of the ODOT, such that the interest payments are one of the large components of the budget. Since we have a transportation problem in Washington County, for example, what things could the legislature do to help out local governments or statewide to help facilitate transportation projects, provide way of funding, et cetera? If you want to answer that question, I know you might not have been prepared for it, but my question is gas tax. We're not going to do 30 or 40-year bonds. What is the funding mechanism by which we finance those things?
Are you asking both candidates, John?
I was looking at both. I'm actually looking at Bruce too, but Bruce doesn't get to answer. All right.
Well, in terms of tax policy, I believe that the best sorts of taxes are user fees. So I think the gas tax is actually a reasonable way to pay for roads, and an increase in that, if necessary, may be the way to go. It's increasingly not a great way to pay for roads when we have more and more electric vehicles, and then those cars aren't going to end up paying for it. And maybe we need to find another way to capture those vehicles. I know that we're not going to find the perfect kind of tax to make sure that the people using the roads pay for it. But the solution probably is some combination of additional funds coming from the state if they have to be, and trying to get through the process of getting all the approvals to build roads a little bit faster. And if that means we need to streamline government, then I'm all for it.
I actually would agree with Kyle that actually his points are right on, and I would also mention that transportation is an issue, and I hear that. I recently attended the Hillsborough Transportation meeting. It is refreshing that the Transportation Committee is taking their committee all around the state to hear the issues and to really talk to the folks in the various areas of the state to see where, what is their issue? Is it, is it rural? Is it suburban? And we have that mix here in Hillsborough. So we have those issues that we need to look at. Because being at that transportation meeting, we heard from folks that have the agriculture concerns of moving their goods to market in a timely manner, getting their vehicles in and out and maneuvering through this traffic. But we also heard from Genentech. And Genentech, the gentleman mentioned that he has their product that needs to get to the Portland airport in a timely manner. They're actually considering and looking at moving that type of production to another area for them because of the missed flights opportunity that they're having at Portland Airport. And so that's an issue. When you are really looking at all of these issues, it's great that the community members are out there talking to folks, looking towards solutions. And I think that it's important that we hear multiple voices around that table, especially Washington County, the #1 economic driver here in the state of Oregon. So, thank you.
I'm Williams, foreign member, and you might want to just stay there. I have this question for you. And actually, for both, if also you can elect Kyle. It is costing quite a bit to finance our schools and to have a relatively good education system. Are there some other things that you think that might really help that we can do to help our schools be the schools that we were really looking for in the future?
Absolutely. As I mentioned, in Hillsborough, cutting $70 million from our budget since 2008 has been an extreme hardship for Hillsborough. And I think that I even mentioned in my opening that we want to address the low graduation rate in this state. It's the 4th lowest graduation rate in the nation, Oregon. If we want to address that, we need to look at CTE. We need to look at vocational training. Folks that really understand that our communities are made up of multiple types of folks working in our community. We need electricians, we need welders, we need teachers, we need doctors, we need engineers. We need to understand that if the pathway is different for everyone, including in my own home. I have 2 boys. I have a son that is getting his 2nd year as a master's as a special education teacher, college focused. My other son went the trade route. And in high school, people said, where are you going to college? Where are you going to college? Well, if you don't know what you want to do, just go get your generals out of the way. Well, that's not being fiscally responsible to these students. So helping them while they're in school to get the opportunity for internships and partnerships to really understand what careers are out there so that if that path takes them to college, they're going to have a strong pathway and invest their dollars wisely. If their pathway does take them to college, we need to provide dual credit options so that when they start school, just like my son, 27 college credits going into Western Oregon University. Really making sure that we make those dollars available, those classes available for those students. It's a win for our economy. It's a win for small business and large business. CTE and vocational training is a must in this state, in this nation.
I'm sorry, I thought your question was, I apologize.
Yes, I would like to respond. If Oregon schools are uncompetitive, and I believe they are, then the key to fixing it is competition. Make them compete. I would be in favor of a system where the customers, the parents of the children in the school, are the ones who pay for the school. If we had something like a universal voucher program and allowed the parents to select the schools, then we would find schools that happen to be better rewarded and schools that are worse would wither away as they lose their enrollment. Competition by itself would increase the quality of the product considerably. And the reason that there isn't a quality focus right now is because the people paying for it are not actually the customers. And that's one thing that we could do to help things out.
Thank you, Janine, Patrick, and thank you very much, Bruce, for representing Dan Mason. So again, ladies and gentlemen, thank you to the candidates that were kind enough to show up and give us their time, their opinions, and their